Welcome to the Philantrepreneur Show, hosted by Dr. Victoria Boyd, designed to offer tips, strategies, and insights to empower nonprofits and entrepreneurs with sustainable win-win solutions. The Philantrepreneur Show is sponsored by the Philantrepreneur Foundation, building capacity through education and professional services.
Well, welcome and good morning. We're here for another great show. This is Dr. Victoria Boyd, President and founder of the Philantrepreneur Foundation and editor of the Philantrepreneur Journal. And as usual, I am thrilled to bring tips, strategies, and insight for the business and nonprofit sector. The Philantrepreneur Foundation is really excited about our conference coming up October 26th through the 28th here in the Las Vegas area. Right at that Sunset Station that's down in Henderson, which is maybe 10 minutes from the airport. One of the main components we're going to be exploring is the process required to develop a social enterprise business plan. It's a highly needed and valuable resource, especially for nonprofits that always need unrestricted income sources. And so this will be the time to learn how to really tap into that resource for you of unrestricted funds. And today's guest is Patrick Hibbard of Social Enterprise Ventures and Patrick Hibbard Consulting. He joined us back on the show in February, if you remember, and shared some information on social enterprise and his concepts and what he's been doing and working in the field. And we've been working together since then over the past several months, exploring concepts and strategies. And I'm extremely excited to have him join us in October as one of our industry experts leading the training. And if you remember, he was one of those growing cadre of young professionals that are researching and finding the importance of really connecting the competencies of the private sector in the nonprofit world. And I'm sure today will be just as valuable as his guest appearance on our last show. But welcome, Patrick, back to the show. You know, you've been extremely busy over the last few months. A move to a new city, a new base on the way, new opportunities. Why don't you bring us up to date on what's going on in your world?
Thanks, Victoria. It's a pleasure to be back. My wife and I, we're actually expecting in January. We'll have a baby. We just found out it's a boy. So we're excited about that. And we just moved from Gainesville down to St. Pete in the Tampa Bay area, the St. Petersburg. So we're excited about that. Right now I'm actually have just kind of a bevy of things going on. Never enough plates spinning. So, let's spin some more. Victoria, you know what I'm talking about. So,
I do. We should own a plate factory.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm right now one of the projects I'm helping working with some friends on doing some sports publishing stuff, but it's kind of really new to me. I don't really have a lot I can talk about on that. Down here in Florida, I've been able to work with some community action agencies and actually working on a proposal with some community development corporations around here. And, surprisingly, I'm getting a really good response. Traditionally, these types of organizations are really, really heavy on the federal grants. And with the recent, fairly recent recession, they're finding room in their budget now for these types of trainings because they don't want to be left at the level of exposure that they were when the federal government started cutting back the budget. So finding some good responses there and helping a client in Orlando with they have a online startup they're trying to get going, which is sort of curating products that are environmentally conscious as well as healthy, and especially with a lot of product reviews from consumers because just because something says that it's good for the environment and healthy for you doesn't mean that it works. So we're trying to sort of put all the connect all the dots for the consumer so that they don't have to worry about their buys. They can feel good about them, and then they know that they're working as well. So just a lot of things going on.
Hey, that's just the nature of who we are. If we don't have several plates spinning, we feel we're underachieving or just not doing enough.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. I'm real happy for you with the baby boy on the way. That's I'm excited for you. Can't wait to have you become the father in January. So let's talk a little bit more about what we're doing this fall. I'm really honored that you'll be one of our presenters at Impact Learning 2015. So let us share some of the important information participants will receive and why this is an opportunity to create more income. Isn't that for everyone? And they need to be in attendance. So let's go back to social enterprise. It's not a new concept, but why has it been so difficult for nonprofits to embrace it?
Generally, what I find is it's a matter of what success looks like, what the metrics are that we're using to measure success. With the private sector, it's pretty simple. And actually, I'll get into this a little later on in the program as well. But in the private sector, the only thing they really need to measure as far as successful metrics is outputs, and especially with what are the units sold. And so that is basically what they use to measure success. How many dollars are coming in? How many products are being sold? How much market share? Stuff like that. With the social sector, with nonprofits, the metrics are a lot different. So you're talking about, not just, you have to measure income to make sure you're operating, but that's not what success looks like. If a nonprofit said, hey, we earned a bunch of money this year, so we're a success, most people would frown upon that. So and not only that, that's not why the nonprofit exists in the first place. The reason for their existence is to, depending upon their mission, is to educate children, to feed the hungry, to house the homeless, or whatever it might happen to be. And so that's how they measure success. So their language is based upon that mission. If I have a mission of feeding hungry children, then that's how I'm going to measure success. How many plates of food were put out? How many kids were actually able to go to school with a full belly rather than hungry? And what the effects of that are? What are the outcomes? How much better are these kids doing in school because they're fed? What is the social impact in the broader economy? Are we spending less as a community on juvenile detention services because kids are fed and they're better educated because they're not hangry when they're going to school.
Right.
So that's what. And so what we have essentially, the way I look at it is we have a problem in translation. So when it's difficult it's like we're speaking two different languages. In the for-profit or private sector, the language is about profit and about how, margins, and it's all, for the most part, pretty quantitative. And you're talking about, these particular issues. And in the social sector, you're talking about, usually there are some quantitative measures, but there's also a big qualitative element to it. So when you try and translate these one to the other, it becomes a little bit difficult because you're speaking different languages. And so a lot of what I've been doing, and a lot of the training that we're going to be doing at the Impact Learning 2015 has to do with sort of relearning the language, and how do we talk about this enterprise, and how do we do costing and feasibility, how do we do, market analyses and market research. It's coming at it from a different angle with a fairly different nomenclature, so that you can actually understand what they're talking about in the private sector, and you can start to read some of these market trends and some of the opportunities that are available in the marketplace so that we can take advantage of them.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Because I'm so glad you mentioned the whole language, I'll call it a barrier. They're generally not on the same page. In fact, in the last journal, we had Linda Lizakowski write or it wasn't maybe, but several columns ago, she wrote about, are you speaking to who your donors are or who your corporate sponsorship, what they understand, and you have to come out of so much of me or this is what we do as an organization, but translate it into what are the marketing terms, what are the business terms, what are the terms that really are used in the private sector, and then show the alignment between what they understand as success and how you are also doing both of those. That's very important in terms of what they should learn. And that's wonderful. They're going to be learning a whole new language. And they have to sort of come open, ready to learn. So what are some of the other highlights that we'll be doing? Even though I'll be there, what are some of the other highlights?
A big thing for me is a lot of the dealing with the language and understanding what market research looks like, in especially establishing these feedback loops and trying to get an understanding of what is needed in the market, and how do we communicate with the market and what this is the broader community and the economy, or whatever the label you want to put on it. And so opening up those channels of communication, because what I found is that it's essentially a lot of the training we talk about driving bringing more revenue into the organization, but through learning these things like the how to do market research and communicate with the market, and like you said, communicating with who your donor base is and who actually are the stakeholders for your organization. Some of those primary stakeholders that really have a vested interest is understanding I can say, my organization has been around for 100 years, right? But the stakeholder, especially a donor, is not really going to care, because I'm giving them a feature, and what they really want is a benefit. What they want to know is, and this it sounds a little shallow to say it, but it's sort of what does this mean to me, or what's in it for me? It's just why is this important to me? And so when we shift that and we say, you can be confident that your donations are coming to an established organization. We're giving them confidence based on the feature of having been around for 100 years. So the communication shift is big, and I look at the training kind of as sort of a Trojan horse in that way. We talk a lot about social enterprise and starting new ventures and improving, going concerns, but overall, what we're looking for is some of those synergistic effects throughout the organization to operate better, to communicate better with the community, and to be more sensitive to the community's needs and what's going on there. And, and sort of wrapping everything into, some of the costing and feasibility analyses, the competitive analyses of who's in the marketplace and so forth. And especially wrapping everything up into a very concise business plan, and having an understanding of how we're actually going to do, sales and promotion, how we're going to do some of the logistics, what do these things actually look like, and coming at it from a very open perspective, I think is what I found is it's very helpful for the organizations I've trained, because they're used to and I've been guilty of the same thing is if I'm operating off of, mainly a couple of grants and a couple of fundraisers throughout the year, then that's most of my literature is geared towards that. And I'm focused on the grant makers, and I'm focused on the big contributors. And those are definitely big stakeholders, but that's a very small portion of the picture. And I think that we need to, and coming away from this with this broader understanding, it's able to open up and to invite in new participants from the community. The millennials that are coming out, they just love to participate in the social sector. This is a big part of what they want to do. We've provided for the generations, each generation over the next, we've made life a little bit easier. And so, this generation doesn't have to worry like, a lot of us have, as far as, where am I going to work? How am I going to support myself? Like, there are all these things there. We always still have to worry about, those things, but it's not as big of a concern. They're more concerned about edification, about how I can, contribute to society. Like, these things are huge, but we have to meet them on their level. We can't.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because speaking of the highlights of the program, our first day is all about marketing. And Michael Drew, who wrote the book Millennium, Pendulum, for the millennium, and we'll be talking about that generation. The whole pendulum theory is based on the we and me cycles, and you were just noting that, they have different needs or what they, and I'll go back to using the term measure of success of what they want to do. And you have to really speak to them or really know who are you speaking to. And you might have to write 3 or 4 different types of documents or stories as you're, talking to the different things. And our first day will focus on how do you write that story, and so then you can take that information into day 2 and 3 of what we're dealing with, now looking internally at your organization. How are you going to really diversify your funding? I'm big on, you've got to diversify your income sources, and this will take them another, just give them, I would say, a toolkit full of documents. And speaking of documents, they'll get a full manual, about 40 pages, that you'll walk them through step by step. Should they bring some of their own organizational documents with them?
Yeah, it's definitely helpful, especially as I mentioned, the features and benefits. One of the exercises that is fruitful through the road trip training is to bring some of the marketing collateral or brochures and so forth from the organization, so that we can go over it and look at what's a feature and what's a benefit. By and large, I mean the social sector is definitely learning to communicate a little bit more effectively along those lines. But going through a lot of the brochures and a lot of the literature that I get from nonprofits, it's really very feature focused. This is who we are, not what this is what it means to you. So having that, definitely having a good understanding. Everything we do is focused on the organization itself. So having an understanding of why the participants are there, as far as what they want to get out of the training, because we talk a lot about those goals from the get-go, especially as they relate to the mission, the vision, and the core values of the organization. Because this isn't just some random person that wants to be an entrepreneur. This is an organization that has performs essential functions in the community, and we want to leverage that position. There's already a position. We can start from there and leverage that into the social enterprise sector of the economy.
Absolutely. So would it be important? I'm getting excited. Should they bring a team? Would it be more valuable to bring a team?
Yeah, definitely. The more people that are there, as far from each organization, will increase their ability to effectively work on the application of the training. It's one thing, like I have my perspective of what an organization has as far as their assets and what the local community, what the marketplace might look like, and the competition and stuff like that. But if I have, some other people to help me brainstorm on some of these issues and to bring some of their knowledge to bear, then it becomes there's this effect. And I hate to keep using the same word, but there's a synergistic effect where, the more people that are there from the organization, then the more progress is made in the training for that group, because they're together. They can actually create more. They can bring more information to bear from their organization than they would even as the sum of their separate parts. So sort of sounding off of each other and using each other as, compatriots in the same organization becomes really useful throughout this training.
Absolutely. I mean, I the whole concept of collaboration is, one that I'm laying the platform for the new campus area, but just coming into a room with other individuals and organizations that come with what I call a fresh perspective on what you've been submerged in, and maybe you haven't come up for air in a while to really see what's going on out there in the world. Even bringing your team, but also having the ability to get input from fresh eyes, whether it's the presenters or other participants, because they're going to be looking at it with their first impression, which is what your audience or the community sees you. They don't have that inside view, and so getting some of that feedback will probably be extremely valuable too. So I'm just seeing all the benefits here. I'm just getting excited. So, what will they actually walk away with?
So they'll walk away with a thorough understanding of how to create a concise business plan, and especially, you or me or most people that probably listen to the show would be able to sit down and write a business plan on a hypothetical enterprise. But more specifically, they walk away with the ability to write a quality, concise business plan that has research performed behind each and every piece of it, as far as what the actual competitive landscape looks like, what the market looks like as far as consumers in looking at some of the secondary research with trends and what the demographics look like and targeting and so forth, but more specifically primary research on with that marketplace to establish if there actually is a market for what they're proposing. So they'll walk away with the ability to create a business plan. I mean, in 2 days we're not going to be able to do the research so that they can create a business plan on the spot, but they'll be able to go back to their communities and work with the tools that they have to communicate and to research, and then to put those into an actual concise business plan. And to the point where, like with the some of my trainees or participant groups, what they've been angling it toward is how do they get everything together so they understand whether there is a market and what the competition looks like and what the feasibility is and costing and pricing and marketing strategies and all that stuff. But also, how do they put it all together in a language and in a way that potential investors would be able to understand and might actually have interest in?
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break here, and then we'll be back with Patrick in just a few minutes.
The Philantrepreneur Foundation. Build your capacity with our educational programs and professional services. Learn how to be a philantrepreneur. Maximize your social impact and maximize your revenue. Visit thephilantrepreneur.com or philantrepreneurfoundation.org to find services, resources, and training to launch, enhance, or improve your business or nonprofit strategy. While there, sign up to receive the Philantrepreneur Journal digital publication. Today's Philantrepreneur Show tip.
Okay, we always bring a show tip or some type of insight. Today I'm going to talk about the term crowdfunding. It's been around for several years now, and it's been shown to be a successful way to raise needed funds to pay for various projects, causes, or personal needs. And it almost has become overused. However, even though it's very popular, be sure you do your homework on the company platform that will meet your needs. All are not created equal, and a couple items you need to check and compare are the service fee. Is the fee per transaction or just overall earnings? What is the rule if the campaign does not meet its goal? Do they return on the money, or do you still are able to collect those funds? And then just the ease of the launch through their platform. So crowdfunding can be a useful strategy if done right, or it can be a huge flop.
The Philantrepreneur Journal, a quarterly digital publication reaching over 600,000 entrepreneurs and nonprofits. Get targeted exposure to reach your ideal customer with our unique Ads for a Cause, where 50% of the fee goes to support our nonprofit training and services programs. Together, we can make a difference, create impact, and build capacity. Visit thephilantrepreneur.com, Marketing Ads tab for all the details. Mention this show and get a 10% discount.
Okay, welcome back as we continue our conversation with our guest today, Patrick Hibbard. He's the Senior Consultant at Social Enterprise Ventures. Okay, you mentioned that you also, as part of your search, you look at management. One being lean startup methodology. I need to read better. I just need to know. I've actually never heard of it. I did go on the website and was trying to, see, okay, what is this? But tell us, what is that and how does it work?
Well, the lean startup sort of movement, initially it came out of the software sector, and there's some other sort of names for this type of methodology, but generally I go with lean startup, and what it looks like is, or the basis is that sort of the traditional way of creating a new venture, specifically with like a large business plan, a lot of planning. You do a lot of sort of building the organization, building out management teams, building out promotional campaigns and logistics for for distribution and so forth. And there's just a lot of back end work that goes into it. And with all of this work being done based upon the assumption that somebody's actually going to want to buy the product or service, right? And that's why a lot of money has been wasted, because what I think the market needs is not necessarily what's going to sell. Just because I think I have a good idea, and believe me, I have a lot of them, Victoria. Just because I think I have a good idea doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in the community is going to think it's a good idea and going to buy my product or service.
Right, and that's like before we started the show. I mentioned I was wanting to do a survey. And, I think I have a lot of good ideas too, but you need to get input. You need to see, okay, does anybody else feel they need this stuff I'm offering? Okay, we're totally on the page here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And essentially what it looks like is, with you start up, you have a basic idea or a vision. Have this vision of, a co-working space or something like that, to use that example of, here's a way that this co-working space can serve the needs of the community, and this is how it's actually going to bring revenue into, the business itself. The assumptions are that, there are businesses in the community that need these particular services or this type of a place. And so those are the assumptions that I have, and I need to figure out how to test those assumptions. In a couple of the innovations with the lean startup methodology, one is what's called a minimum viable product, which is an MVP. Essentially it's the bare minimum of a product you can put together and put out into the market. If I'm starting up some type of a co-working space, especially in a place where there might not be one, I can start with something that's actually, maybe a virtual co-working space that has a similar type of offering that I would, whereas it's online. We can do, something that's smaller, get somebody to allow, limited use of space in a certain period of time. Just try and bring some people together and see what the response might be. Whatever it is, the idea is, rather than building out the entire organization ahead of time, and especially like this comes from the software world, you're talking about, hours and hours and hours and hours of code in writing the software and, putting a lot of people to work so that you have like this extremely polished, perfect product that you're going to try and sell. And what they started to do with Lean Startup is, let's put out something that does pretty much what we think customers want, and then learn from them what it is about it that we need to change, right? And what is it, if they don't like it at all, how can we pivot into something else? And essentially, you put out the minimum viable product that's geared towards testing those assumptions, and you get the data on, if nobody's buying your product, obviously there's data there, but you get data on not only, people committing funds, or, sometimes it's committing time and energy or something. There has to be some sort of commitment from the person you're getting the information from. And it's generally not just sort of hypothetical. And so you get that data, and then you from there, obviously, you want to measure it. In the other innovation that Lean Startup brings to the table is the concept of innovative accounting. And what it is the basic definition is how you define, measure, and communicate progress. And coming from the private sector, generally, as we talked about earlier, it's just about outputs as far as, how much product we're kicking out the door, and especially about sales as far as how much money is coming in. And when you're dealing with the startup, when you're in the early phases, there's a good chance you're not going to make any profit, because you got to get yourself established. Particularly if you have market share pricing strategy, or you're working on that, or you have a lot of R&D costs that it's going to take a while to recoup, then you're not going to be profitable. But that doesn't mean that it's not successful. Even if you spin out a product and nobody buys it, you have gained something because you have that information. So innovative accounting is basically looking at how do we measure that information rather than just in dollars and how many products are going out the door. How can we measure what this information that's coming in from consumers, positive or negative? And we take those measurements, and we use basically what the marketplace is telling us, and we use that to adjust the product or to pivot into something new if we're getting a completely negative response. And essentially what's done there is, because you started with the idea of vision, you created a minimum viable product, you threw it out into the marketplace, see who reacts to what, you measure as that's going on, what the reactions are, and, from actual customers, you try and get in touch with them. There's been some of the information messaging services from the guys that started Lean Startup. They actually didn't even have the software built behind it. They had the sort of man behind the curtain thing. The people who were doing the startup were actually sitting there at their computers in real time, typing in creating the stuff that these people were asking for, rather than writing all of the codes so that the software bots could do it, because they didn't know if it was actually going to be worth their time. But as you're doing that, the information is coming in, and then you adjust your product or service to that information. And so that cycle is one feedback loop. And the goal is to minimize the time from when I adjust the product to putting it out into the marketplace, to getting the data of how many people are buying and what their reactions are to the product and what they like, what they don't like, and so forth, and measuring that data and then readjusting. The concept is, how can I make that as quick as possible? How can I get this information into my organization and adjusting my product or service as quickly as possible, so that this is exactly what the community is asking for, Go ahead. Go ahead. What I was going to say is, the way that this relates into social enterprise is that my contention, and we talked earlier about the language differences. If you'll notice, this sounds very similar to measuring social impact, this innovative accounting. So what my contention is that many nonprofits, especially the sophisticated nonprofits who are good at not only measuring outcomes, how many plates of food are going to kids in the morning before they go to school, but they're also able to measure outcomes. Those kids that came and ate those meals, are they doing better at school, right? And then what does that mean for their family and for their neighborhood and for their community and for, et cetera. And so these things are not new concepts for the social sector. We've been doing this for a long time, right? And we've been learning on how to, as these things happen, how do we adjust what we are doing to be more effective at this social impact? The idea is to affect change. And so we're already trying to measure this change.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to total quality management, which is that continuous process and cycle of improvement. The whole Kaizen, that imperfection is perfection. That you take that imperfection as the tool to go to the next step, because now you know what does and does not work, and also just the whole concept of just get started. You know, you don't have to have a perfect tool because it'll never be perfect, but accept the concept of get started so that you can get the feedback and find out how to make it better by using the data, by using what it is that you're doing. And I love that it then transitions into, okay, so what language and how are you going to measure it? Because that becomes a part of, and I see all these overlaps, when I teach program evaluation, which a lot of this is very similar, and I think I'm going to really research up on this and see some of the strategies. It's the logic model that we use in program development evaluation, where you have your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, and those might be mapped out into different success benchmarks. I love it. Okay, so just had to many comparisons. Go ahead.
The people that sort of started this were some of the initial people to work along these lines, and in software development actually were basically attempting to apply the Kaizen and the Toyota model of quality into the software sector. So you're exactly right. It's along similar lines as far as being able to get data, analyze that data, and react to it as soon as possible, and trying to offer the best quality as possible. And what this is, the data is essentially going from the factory floor. It's actually expanding that sort of sphere of influence out into the community and saying, what what needs is this meeting in the community? What needs are anyways, grammar. What needs is this meeting in the community, and what are the reactions to it in the community, and how can we adjust to that? And it's basically it's as far as I'm concerned, it's been a long time coming as far as making the community or the consumer a part of the conversation, more than just essentially voting with their dollars. I like this, so I'm going to buy it, or I don't like it, so I'm not going to buy it. Because just operating off of that information in the private sector, especially at the speed of money nowadays, or the velocity of money, as they say, it moves so fast that if you're only measuring in dollars and cents and quantitative products out the door, then you're not going to have a going concern.
And I don't see sustainability in that, because everything goes in cycles. Right. Yes, that product will be popular today, but that popularity might be based on a trend versus because it's a good problem solver, which I see as a big difference in terms of viability or feasibility of a certain service or product. Is it something that has longevity and is actually solving a problem that has a long-term life, or is it just a trend because, people think that's cool, and by tomorrow it's going to be out of style and nobody will care about it? And I guess that comes down to value. Have you put the value?
Well, and what the value proposition is for the community, and who's defining that value proposition, especially, sitting back and, as you said, you can't, traditionally we would measure future performance. The traditional statement is the best measure of future performance is past performance. And we've obviously come to find that that's not true. There's a lot of things that go into, just a basic demand curve. There are so many different variables that go into one basic demand curve that there's just limitless moving parts that could change that. And so what we're trying to establish is a way to understand what's happening as close to real time as possible in the marketplace, so that we can react to that and deal with what it is, what the needs are of the day, rather than extrapolating from, last year the growth, last year, 2 years ago, the growth in petroleum was, everybody's hiring, everybody is, investing in petroleum. And over the past 2 years, like, we're at a record low for barrels of oil. And, have to say I'm not very upset that the price of gas is going down so far. But what that means is that, in the Midwest and in these big oil basins that have been seeing these booms, there's just fleets of trucks that are being repossessed because, people can't afford them anymore. There's big changes because people were saying, well, over the past 2 years, I've been making a really good living at these oil fields, so I'm just going to go ahead and finance a truck over the next 5 or 10 years that, normally I wouldn't be able to afford. And when their pay is cut down to either nothing or, much less than what they originally earned, then obviously they're not going to be able to afford it. So we're trying to create systems wherein we can actually we can gain information and react to it as quickly as possible. And back to sort of the language thing, I look at all business and all any activity that we have in any of the sectors, even in the political sphere, what we're engaged in is a continuous conversation. There's information coming in. There's always information coming in. It's a matter of if we're open to hear it, if we're willing to hear it, and a lot of what startups struggle with and new social enterprises coming out of nonprofits is being harshly truthful and critical of the enterprise without a lot of ego attached to it or the vested interest in its success. If you say, well, I'm going to do my best, but if this isn't a success, then we're okay, then it's okay if the information I'm getting back is not positive. Then I need to think of something else. We need to do something else. My idea isn't working. It takes a lot of sort of ego deflation in that sense. And then also is, are we thinking about it critically, and are we approaching it in a sophisticated manner, especially as, oil has been very volatile over the past couple of decades, ever since it's been, discovered. Oil has been extremely volatile. Maybe I should just bank these extra checks I'm getting and see what happens. So it's a matter of being a part of the conversation, right? And we want to be as truthful as possible with ourselves, and also we want to be able to communicate back to, through matching the needs of the community, right? We want to be that part of the conversation. I see these needs in the community, whether it's kids that need to be fed before school, or whether it's a new software program that's going to make, a couple of $1 million. Whatever the conversation I'm participating in, it's being as open and aware as possible throughout the entire conversation.
Absolutely. And what, with all of this conversation, what's bringing to mind to me, and it's the term that Gene Block uses often, and it's aimed mainly at the nonprofits and some of the leaders that, because I see them often when you're trying to, I'll say, take them through change, make them or have them try to understand that there is a different way. And she uses the term charity think or poverty mindset.
Yeah.
And I know, with the conversation we're having here, we're using a lot of technical terms and comparing it to oil, and real what I call heavy-duty corporate language. And many nonprofits might be just sit there as they're listening to this and say, oh, well, this is not for me. I'm just a little nonprofit, which I want them to evolve out of that. So can we talk just a little bit about how does this really apply to that smaller nonprofit that actually has the capacity to grow or to go to a different level, that they're not just the little nonprofit? Can this be applied to them, and should they be thinking in those terms?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that from my experience, the scale doesn't really matter. It's still a conversation. When working with a charity that makes meals and distributes them to the homes of the elderly or disabled, right? These people are already a part of the conversation in that they see the need. There's people that want to age in place or are unable to cook all of their meals or whatever the situation might be, and so they're trying to meet that need in the community by offering something, offering their piece of the conversation, and even to the smallest possible nonprofit. Looking at up in Gainesville, there's some really good small community theaters, and they not only is their little theater contingent upon ticket sales and so forth, but they need to know what the community actually values. What is it that this community would actually be receptive to as far as these little plays and stuff. And there's a larger theater that does some of the bigger shows, but what need are they not filling? That's part of that competitive landscape, and being very honest with that part of the conversation. Well, they have this particular portion of the theatrical offerings. They have this covered. So if we're doing the same thing, we're probably not going to be able to make a living or to get people to come see our show and experience what we have to offer. And having that type of understanding, and then having the understanding of the community, the people that do come in, have a way to get in touch with them so that you can talk to them and say, hey, what is it that what did we do right? What can we do better? How can we serve you better? And making them a part of the conversation. And, just the fact that you got a hold of somebody that came to one of your plays and said, hey, what can we do better? How can we serve you better? Just the fact of doing that and making them a part of the conversation actually gives them ownership of your little theater, or whatever it is. Making them a part of the conversation gives them that ownership. And also when they give you get this conversation, this communication coming from the people that you serve in the community, and then you create something to answer that particular question, or that particular concern, then they can see the actual results and say, yes, we're actually, this is our community. We live together and we operate together, and we have a relationship going back and forth, and it creates these stronger bonds to the community. That means easier fundraising, more people coming in for ticket sales if it's a theater, and it strengthens that conversation so that every other aspect of what you do is going to be easier.
Right, absolutely. And what it's really doing, if they just understand that these conversations are really not only being what I call the pre-assessment and the post-assessment, so that you can demonstrate and measure your impact, which is basically what they need to do. Which is sort of putting it in a nutshell. Wow. Yeah. Okay. A lot of great information. So, we're getting ready to wrap up here. Do you have any, just, I'll say, takeaway or final notes on the social enterprise, the lean method and startup method, and that people can walk away and say, this is what I need to do?
Well, I think that the biggest lesson that I try and convey is from the very start whenever I do trainings with nonprofits, and also try and continually keep it in mind for myself, is the idea of capacity or potential, and am I reaching my potential? Can I do better? And a lot of what I like to talk about with when training nonprofits as far as capacity, especially in the when we're doing a asset inventory or that type of a forum, then it's all about, is there a capacity that we're not using that could actually be put to use? We'll say the example I always use is Uber or Airbnb. right? I drove to work by myself today. If I was savvy, I could set up, some ride sharing with some of my coworkers, and we could actually, use the capacity that's in my car. And Uber found a way to fill that capacity. They saw that there was excess capacity, and what they're doing is they're using stuff that's already there, and they're leveraging that so that the entire marketplace is more efficient. There's a lot of sort of legal issues and stuff that, I don't want to go into that. I'm definitely not a policy wonk.
Well, basically, you don't want nonprofits to leave money on the table. Right.
And there's every single nonprofit I've worked with has something that they're not utilizing to its full potential, and just continually thinking critically about what it is that we do, how can we do it better, and especially not lying to myself when measuring performance, like you talked about. If I'm 100% honest, then there's some days, Victoria, that I could have done better, and I need to be honest with myself about that. And as an organization, we need to be honest about that to say, where can we be better? We're here to serve the community, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit or a political entity. We're here to serve the community. Are we doing that? And how well are we doing at it? And the more we do that, then the better we are at it, and the more efficient the whole system is. And really, over time, the better off we all are.
That's great advice.
So that's my public information announcement for the day.
Take a look in the mirror. Patrick, it has been wonderful having you on the show, and I'm sure some of our listeners might want to reach out to you or even get you your services. And so this is your marketing time. Tell us the best way to reach you or contact you or find out what you're doing, and so tell us all how to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the work that I'm doing nowadays is through Social Enterprise Ventures, along with Gene Block. So you can a quick Google search on Social Enterprise Ventures will get us, but you can go to socialenterpriseventures.com. That's one word. You can reach me at Patrick at P. Hibbard Consulting, PHIBBARD Consulting.com. And you can always find out. I have all my contact information up on phibbardconsulting.com.
Fabulous. It's also up on the Philantrepreneur Foundation website. You can find that. And also, remember, we can go to our website and find Nonprofit Guide to Social Enterprise. Show Me the Unrestricted Money by Gene Block, she was just mentioned. I also think you ought to pick up that book for Impact Learning. It would be a great resource to have. We'll have it available. If you go and register for the 2015 Impact Learning Conference, you'll actually get a huge discount on that book if you buy with your registration. And you need to do that today. Just a reminder that Impact Learning, the registration is open. The discount for rooms in September 20th. So once again, do it today. And regular registrations will go into late registration after September 30th, so you just have a few more weeks. But don't miss this valuable learning opportunity. Patrick will be there with us. Gene Block will be there. Michael Drew, Kellen Cosman. We have a great, me too. I'll be there too. We actually have a great lineup. And you'll come and you'll have an opportunity to create strategies to take back to your organization and then take it to the next level. So visit pfimpactlearning.info today. It's real easy to find. That's pfimpactlearning, all one word, .info, and you'll find everything you need. Okay, are you a philantrepreneur with a story to tell? Do you have tips, strategies, or insight for today's entrepreneurs and nonprofits? Then you need to be a guest on our show. We want to hear from you. Do you want to explore the archives of the show? Well, visit our new YouTube channel for access to all of the past shows. In fact, this show we're going to post and promote because it has all of the tips for our conference coming up. Again, everything can be found on our website. Just look for the radio show or the YouTube tabs. So, as I bring this show to a close, join us for our next show. where we will meet another great guest with tips and insights for your success. In the meantime, we ask, are you a philantrepreneur?
Thank you for tuning in to the Philantrepreneur Radio Show, hosted by Dr. Victoria Boyd. Get involved. Follow us on Facebook and other social media outlets. If you wish to share comments or suggestions or appear as a guest on our show, visit www.thephilantrepreneur.com. Contact Victoria Boyd. Email her at theboyd@thephilantrepreneur.com. The Philantrepreneur Radio Show is a production of and sponsored by the Philantrepreneur Foundation, a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.